In this short video, we will understand React plus Spring Boot architecture in a proper request and response flow. We will see how the user interacts with the React frontend, how React calls the Spring Boot backend, how the backend talks to the database, and how the JSON response comes back to the screen. The flow starts with the user opening the web application in a browser. The browser loads the React frontend. React is responsible for everything the user sees on the screen. It contains UI components, pages, routines, services, forms, buttons, and user interactions. For example, when the user opens an employee list page, React displays the page layout first. But the actual employee data usually comes from the backend. To get that data, React uses an HTTP client. The HTTP client sends a REST API request to the Spring Boot backend. React and Spring Boot commonly exchange data in JSON format. Now the request reaches the Spring Boot backend. Inside Spring Boot, the controller receives the API request. The controller understands which API endpoint was called and passes the work to the service layer. The service layer contains the business logic. It decides what data is needed and applies the required rules or processing. When data is required, the service calls the repository layer. The repository layer communicates with the database. The database can be MySQL, PostgreSQL, or another database. After the database returns the data, the response flows back through the same layers. The repository returns data to the service. The service prepares the final result and sends it to the controller. The controller sends the result back as a JSON response. React receives this JSON response from the backend. Then React updates the UI and shows the latest data to the user. So the full flow is: user opens the app, React displays the front end, React sends an HTTP request, Spring Boot processes it, the backend reads or writes data in the database, JSON comes back, and React updates the screen. React handles the front-end experience. Spring Boot handles the backend logic and the database stores the application data. Together they form a full-stack web application. That is React plus Spring Boot architecture explained in a simple flow.